I'm sure there are many people in the room with a lot more practice getting control of the classroom than I have, but thank you for your cooperation. My name is Peter Stanton, and I'm with Worcester Business Journal, and we're very pleased to have all of you here this morning for an outlook on the future of higher education. It promises to be, I think, a rich conversation, and we'll get to it shortly. In terms of this particular session we're holding this morning, this represents, this year is our 25th anniversary of the Worcester Business Journal. And when we were thinking earlier, thank you very much. That'd be quite young if we were college, but maybe quite old for a media organization, except for daily newspapers. Anyways, and so we were thinking ahead and we thought, why don't we'd love to take a closer look at a couple of really key industries in our region, not just at the tactics that's involved and how they get from this year to next year, but at sort of what's involved in the transformation that's going on in two major industries. And we had a session a month ago on healthcare, where we looked, 10 plus years into the future. And this morning, obviously, we're meeting on higher education. Both those are major industries in Central Massachusetts and have a significant influence. It's interesting. I looked back at our list of colleges 25 years ago, and there aren't that many changes. There's certainly changes in student bodies. There's been a lot of growth. I think there's one college that's not operating right now, Atlantic Union, which is in Lancaster, but the new one added to the list for our region was Mass College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, which has just been a juggernaut. So, one's out, but replaced by a very dynamic school. But our question here today is what will the next decade bring? And I think, when we all look at sort of our colleges and universities, Worcester, Central Massachusetts, we are blessed to be sort of a college town and a college community. They are great assets, and their influence as employers, as neighbors, as members of the community, as producers of tomorrow's workforce, as cultural centers, is extraordinary, and their continued health and well-being is critical to our region's success. In looking at the numbers, and Rich, I know you've got a lot of numbers, I didn't check this one, but I know in Central Massachusetts, in our book of lists this year, there were 16 total colleges and universities listed, including Central Mass and MetroWest, 13,000 total employees, and 39,000 total full-time and graduate students. So those are some big numbers, and obviously we'll have an interesting conversation about where some of those schools are going. So we're extremely pleased to have Robert Johnson, Barry Maloney, David Angel, and Lee Rubenstein here to talk with us, and we're looking forward to that conversation. It is my pleasure, however, to first introduce our moderator and also someone who's going to give us a keynote and lay the context out. Before I get to that, I just want to acknowledge two things. Number one, I know in the audience we have several folks, but someone did spot earlier, Senator Michael Moore, who's joined us this morning. Senator Moore, thank you. And I also want to say when you look at the panel, you look at the names and you say they're all men. How did that happen? This is terrible. So I do want to just say, and Rich Doherty said to me, gee, should I address the fact that this panel is all men? And I said, well, no, let me take the heat for that. So we did ask a college, one of the presidents, college presidents, who's a woman who couldn't make it, and then Lee Rubenstein from edX is actually filling in for Kathy Pugh, who was on our panel up until a few days ago, but had death of a very close friend and had to be at that service this morning. So we thank Lee for filling it. So it was not out of a blindness or a lack of consciousness. So hopefully that absolves everyone. So anyways, I'd like to ask David Felper, who's the practice leader for labor, employment, and higher education at Bowditch and Doherty, to come up for a few comments. David.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. That wasn't very good. I know it's a late night for everybody, but I know people can do better. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Keeping with the theme of things, we'll give you an A for effort on that response. We know and work with a number of the colleges and universities that are participating in the program today, as well as with others that are present in the room this morning, and we have a long relationship with AICM also. And for all those reasons, we are very pleased to be able to sponsor today's program and be part of the presentation. I'm also pleased to be able to take a few minutes to talk about two of my favorite subjects, Bowditch and Dewey and our higher education practice group at the firm. As some of you may be aware, Bowditch and Dewey is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year as a law firm. We have offices in Worcester, which is our main office, MetroWest, and in Boston. We have our traditional practice areas, which you might expect: litigation, labor and employment, estate and finance planning, business and financial finance, as well as real estate. But we also have a very robust higher education practice group. Within the firm, we have approximately 15 attorneys, some of whom are here this morning, who practice in the area of higher education. And with those 15 attorneys, we're able to provide more than 300 years of collective experience to higher education issues on behalf of the many colleges and universities that we represent. With our multiple offices and our wide breadth of experience, we're able to represent colleges and universities from one end of the state to the other on virtually every issue and topic that affects them on a daily basis. That includes labor and employment. It includes real estate, from construction contracts to permitting to all phases of the building process and opening facilities, compliance issues, employee benefits and ERISA issues and executive compensation. It also includes intellectual property, policy development and revisions to handbooks and policy manuals for college universities. Virtually anything that touches the college or university environment, we have the skill and experience to able to assist them in addressing those particular issue and able to do it in a timely, efficient, and cost-effective manner for them. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to showcase Bowditch and Dewey in our higher education practice group. And like you, I'm looking forward to a very informative program this morning. Thank you.
It is my pleasure to introduce Richard Doherty. Richard, since 2005, has served as the president of the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in Massachusetts, known as, don't ask me to say this one right next to the College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, AICUM. Okay? The group represents some 60 independent colleges and universities throughout Massachusetts and 275,000 students. In addition, AICUM offers input on tax policy and other public policies to promote and support our higher education institutions. Rich previously served for 10 years as Senior VP of Public Affairs for Caritas Christi Healthcare Systems. Prior to that, as a senior consultant for McDermott and O'Neill, and as Director of State Relations for Harvard University. And one of his first jobs really early on was as Director of Communications for Senator John Durkin in New Hampshire. So I'm sure he's got a long political commentary we could probably hear, separate from his comments on where the colleges and universities are going. But nonetheless, let's invite up Richard Doherty.
So I'm dual mic'd here. Great. Well, thank you very much, Peter. Thank you very much to the Worcester Business Journal for inviting me out here. I just want to echo the importance we place in the relationship we have with Bowditch and Dewey at AICUM. Bowditch has been an affiliate member of ours. Last month, we had a symposium for our colleges out here at for colleges across the state here at Holy Cross, and they provided a terrific best practices in a particular area of expertise that was, really well received by our member representatives in attendance. I have two assignments this morning. One is to provide you with a little bit of a factual framework around the contributions of higher education to the education, economy, and culture of the Commonwealth and to the city of Worcester. And much of that I think you probably know about, but sometimes it takes a moment to pause and reflect on just what all those contributions really are. The second assignment is much easier, given the star power of the panel that Peter and his team has assembled for us this morning, and that is simply to sort of tee them up and let them talk about the current challenges faced by college presidents and higher education leaders, and to ask them to look into the future, look to 2025, and sort of give us a sense of where higher education is going, and to give their prognostications. So we just finished the prognostication season, but I think we can keep it going for one more morning, and to offer their perspective on where there are opportunities and challenges to overcome for these institutions in order to expand educational opportunities for their students and for the communities in which they work. So going to the first part, just sort of giving a bit of a framework of the higher ed environment in Massachusetts and how we may differ from the rest of the country. Some of those differences are opportunities for us. Some of those differences you will see, particularly on the demographic front, are challenges that need to be overcome. And then we'll bring our panel up and have a sort of a little bit of a structured Q&A, and then we'll open it up and all hell will break loose. So I'm going to get used to this. So here are the enrollment numbers for Massachusetts from last year. This is total full-time and part-time enrollment in our private independent colleges in blue. So for some of you in the back of the room, I can appreciate, got these glasses here, that you may not be able to pick up everything. So, the private or independent not-for-profit colleges are in blue. The yellow are the four-year public enrollments. Green are community colleges. And that slice of salmon represents the much talked about, but actually quite small, 1% of the for-profit college sector. The interesting takeaway that not everyone is aware of, from my perspective, is that Massachusetts is the only state in the country which educates more students in private colleges than public colleges, and that that has all sorts of implications for our economic development policies and our state appropriations process. Higher ed is a tremendous economic driver in the state. I think it's interesting that the two sectors that you've kicked off your 25th anniversary year session with are both not-for-profit sectors, and we're one of the leading states in the country in terms of the concentration and importance of the not-for-profit sectors in the higher ed world. Now, not all of higher ed is not-for-profit, and not all of healthcare is not-for-profit, but our public and private colleges combined account for $41 billion in economic impact every year. And we're not only the educators of the workforce of tomorrow, which is often what people think of, we are also an incredibly important educator for today, one of the top 4 employers in the state, and we are also a tremendous global talent magnet, bringing researchers, scholars, students, and airlines from all over the world to Massachusetts and to Boston. There was a recent Wall Street Journal article on how Logan Airport was fighting above its weight class in winning all these direct flights from around the world, and that has had a lot of impact on where students from those countries make decisions on where they might want to pursue educational opportunities. We just opened up in June direct flights from Beijing. We're going to be opening up new flights next spring from Hong Kong. We have flights, direct flights from Panama City now, from the United Arab Emirates. It's pretty impressive how Massachusetts is absolutely seen internationally as an education destination. And there's a tremendous amount of economic activity that those international students bring to Massachusetts also. It's about $1.8 billion a year. Our researchers and our research universities also attract some $2.4 billion in federal and sponsored research every year. We are also critical pipeline for the educated workforce for the biotech, engineering, and innovation economy in Massachusetts. We're educating for the high demand jobs with the independent colleges playing an important role in filling that need in the state's workforce requirements. I mentioned the international talent magnet piece. We also are known for being a talent magnet around the country. And I think one of the things that is surprising to many is that California, for instance, is now the #3 sender of students to Massachusetts. And you sort of see cracking the top 10 there are Florida and Texas. And I'll flip to the next slide and give you a sense of why that's going on. In the Northeast, all 8 Northeast states are going to be facing a very significant demographic challenge with traditional 18-year-old students. Every single one of those 8 states is going to see a decline in those numbers over the next 4 years now. But you see with a number of southern states, huge differences in terms of their demographics with the same age population. And that's why we're starting. And so in the case of Florida, for instance, and it holds true some with California, their public institutions just cannot meet the capacity needs of that state's population. And so they're looking elsewhere. And the colleges, both public and private in Massachusetts, are helping to step up and accept those students. One backyard opportunity available to our students. So this slide, for those of you who can't see, sort of going up to the, say at noon to 1 o'clock, that's the percentage of students, 10% in Massachusetts, with no high school diploma. Then we're going around in gradations of education. So red is high school graduates only. Green is some college, no degree. Purple, associate's degree. Bachelor's degree in blue, and orange, graduate or professional degree. Massachusetts has the highest percentage of students who've attained a college degree of any state in the country. Washington, D.C. may have a higher percentage, but they're not a state. So I don't mention them. But there is an opportunity there, and I'm hoping that Lee, who's on the panel and will be joining us, might be able to talk about the opportunities available through technology to reach some of those former students who are now in that green slice of the pie, who haven't been able to complete their degree but have had some substantial college work under their belt and might be able to benefit from technology innovation in terms of being able to pursue that degree. That's 738,000 students, former students, adult learners here in Massachusetts who we could bring along to degree completion status. And I'm not going to steal Lee's presentation, but for those of you who may not be as familiar with all the nomenclature around technology in higher education, the massive open online courses. We hear a lot about MOOCs. Not everyone knows what the MOOC acronym stood for, but it allows for much more open democratic participation and access to higher education through the internet. And there's been significant growth, a doubling in the past 2 years, with universities employing some level of online learning. So it may not be all in the world of MOOCs, but some online learning. We also see in classrooms, flipped classrooms, where there's a model of teaching in which recorded lectures are viewed outside of the classroom, and then there be more focused instructional time off of those lectures inside the classroom in terms of the interaction between faculty and students. And that was a little more prevalent with K through 12 students, but it's starting to migrate into higher education as well. And I think that the opportunity to get a better understanding of how students learn and how a college and down to the faculty level can interact with that student so that they best learn the material being presented to them can be achieved. And that's something that I think we can develop further with the new technology. A lot of talk about the cost of college, clearly. And this is going to seem as a bit of a counterintuitive surprise slide for many of you. This only is taking a look at the tuition and fees at private colleges in the country. But you know, a lot of talk about how can you get it under control. The cost of college is just skyrocketing. You know, is technology the answer? And so what you have here are two blue bars. The one on the far left is representing 2003-04 sticker prices for tuition and fees at $24,070. And the bar in 2013-14 is $30,090. So that's the sticker price for just tuition and fees. We're not talking about room and board. So that's about a 25% increase over 10 years. But that's really not what most students pay. What most students pay is that price minus what they get in student aid from the federal government, from the state government, and from the institutions themselves. And so when you factor that in, you see that adjusted for inflation in 2003-04, that number was $13,600. And in 2013-14, it was $12,460. So it's actually the net price of tuition and fees has actually gone down in the last decade. And people say, boy, if you have a kid in college, it sure doesn't feel that way. How is that possible? Well, one of the reasons it's gone down is that there has been a tremendous infusion at the federal level in terms of student aid with increases to the Pell Grant program and the stimulus bill in 08-09. And also colleges responding to that crisis with considerable increases in their own institutional aid. And so one of the reasons I think it feels like that can't be is borne out by this slide. And this shows sort of the income increases, family income in the 80s, in the 90s, and basically the last decade. And as you can see, in the 80s and 90s, family income was growing, adjusted for inflation. And in the last, in 2002 to 2012, it has gone down considerably for every quintile. And just in the last couple of years, I think the there's a sense that for the top 2%, they're starting to break through. But for everyone else, it is still, they've been swimming upstream and continue to be swimming upstream. And I think that that is why the sense and the feel that college costs are still challenging for families exists. What can we do about that? A couple of things that we, as an association, spend our time working on in concert with our colleagues in public higher education is to try to increase the overall support for public higher education in the state and the overall support for financial aid within that budget line item in the state budget. So with this slide, which gets worse and worse as the program goes along in terms of readability, in the middle you have a yellow line that shows that on average 13% of state budgets go to financial aid. In Massachusetts, we're that red bar where we're at 9%. Now, the difference between that off of our financial aid budget is about $40 million. So for us to get to a national average where we're spending about the same as the rest of the country in terms of need-based financial aid to help students with affordability and help their families with affordability, we'd need to infuse about $40 million more into that program in a reasonable time frame. But there are a number of competitor states at the far right of this graph that are investing way more than that. If you look at it, New York, New Jersey, California are all investing in an alarmingly greater amount of their higher education budget to financial aid. And there is no question that a greater investment on our part here would help students with their student debt amount. I mean, it's just a simple mathematics in. If you're getting more money in state aid, you yourself are paying less in terms of your obligation and cost of college. This is a budget that just blows me away. I mean, this is a slide that blows me away. This shows that from the individual student's perspective, our average student grant is $657. If you take the amount of money we spend on the grant programs in Massachusetts divided by the number of students that get the grant, $657. That is just above Arkansas, so that's the good news, and just below Alabama. And that puts us, I think, at around 47th in the nation. Now, this is sort of when I tend to go off into a Seth Meyers SNL rant. Really? Is that what we're about in terms of our priorities here in the state, in terms of investing in making college more affordable? And again, you look to the far left of that graph, you see California, New Jersey, and New York with average grants 9 times, 7 times, and 5 times greater than ours. So that's not good. So I'm going to run through a couple of more slides and then get our panelists up here. So I already made mention of the fact that while there's a common perception the college tuition keeps increasing by double digits and it's not sustainable, the facts do not bear that out. And in fact, net cost of college less today than it was 10 years ago. Student debt is skyrocketing, with students graduating with $100,000 in debt. 0.2% of undergraduates graduate with $100,000 in student debt. The average amount of student debt in Massachusetts is around $28,000. It's around $28,500 for a private college student, and it's around $27,000 for a public college graduate. And there are about 40% of students who graduate with no debt at all. And that spans those students who are well-to-do and are able to pay without having to go into debt, and it also includes those students who receive tremendous amount of financial aid and don't have to go into debt. We also have one of the lowest student default rates in the country, and to me that is a proxy for how our students are graduating into good jobs that allow them to keep up with their student loan payments, and you can see that the AICM institutions have a student loan default rate far below the national average, and far below the national average just for other private colleges. Federal government, in the last reauthorization of the Higher Ed Act, put in a number of procedures to make the payment of college loans easier for students and allows students to make. Oops. I was wondering if that was me being told. It allows for students to be able to make their payments much more easily than based on their income, and be able to sort of keep up with it. And then there are a number of provisions that allow for debt forgiveness if you go into public service jobs, education, et cetera. Is college worth it? Absolutely. 63% of the future job openings in Massachusetts will require a bachelor's degree or higher. This is the third highest percentage in the country. Unemployment rate for college students over 25 is half that of those with only a high school graduation. There is still a higher education lifetime earning premium, where a four-year college graduate can expect to earn somewhere between $1.1 and $1.2 million a year over their lifetime. And that it gives you some sense for the context of the conversation that we hope we can begin right now. And with that, I'd like to call up our panelists. And there is, in your program, there is a fabulous set of bios of our morning speakers. But to get them up onto the panel, we have David Angel, president of Clark University, who you all know well here. David's been at Clark for 27 years, the president since 2010. And David and Clark has been an integral leader in the revitalization of the neighborhood in Worcester around Clark and the greater Worcester community, and continues to spearhead a number of initiatives related to liberal arts. Robert Johnson took over as the 10th president at Becker College in July 2010, and this charismatic leader has charged the institution with a new world-ready entrepreneurial mission, the creation of groundbreaking academic programs, and both of them are proud members of the AICM Board of Trustees, and I'm very much grateful to your participation there. Barry Maloney, president of Worcester State University, became their 11th president in 2011, and you have been absolutely committed to a students first charge, providing an excellent education at an affordable price in a vibrant campus atmosphere. And Lee Rubenstein, who Peter mentioned, is pinch hitting graciously today for his colleague, serves as edX's VP for Business Development, leading their engagements with their prospects and partner colleges and foundations and NGOs. And since I am quite confident that you all know our college representatives here, I'm going to start with Lee to give us a bit of a sense of what edX is all about and what the world of sort of the new world of higher education and technology is all about. So if you could just sort of give us a little bit of a brief introduction on what you're all involved in.
I have 30 minutes?
Yeah. Actually, let me,
Okay.
I ate up a lot of your time, so you're down to about 4.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll try to go fast then, and thank you for inviting us. We're really happy to be here. I would like to ask first, has anyone ever been on the edX website to take an edX course or a MOOC course? Raise your hand. Yes? Oh, a couple of people. Great. Has anyone taken a MOOC of any kind? Okay, a couple more. So something very exciting and different and disruptive has started happening in education, and it was brought about by a tsunami of events. And those events began with, how can we really help the world become a better place if we think we have all the answers and the best courses and the best knowledge? In this case, at Harvard and MIT, that decided that this was going to be an initiative they would undertake, but we don't share it with everyone in the world that ought to have it. So I think from their perspective, they would do something very disruptive, and that was make the best courses from Harvard and MIT available to everyone, anywhere that wanted to have them for free. And so we started to look at platforms on how we could do that, and decided there was nothing out there that really suited our needs. And like everything Harvard and MIT, they go, well, I could build something better than this. And we're off to the races. So the first thing that we did was put together a course with Anant Agarwal, who's the CEO of edX, and he had been teaching circuits and electronics, a very hard foundational course at MIT for 25 years. And we said, we'll offer that course for free. We're going to put it out there on the web that you could take it for free. You'll get an honor code certificate from MIT if you do it. If we get 5,000 people to sign up for this, we think it's something that we could move forward with and ought to explore further. We put it up online, offered it for free. 160,000 people worldwide signed up for the course within 48 hours. We didn't have a platform. We didn't have a course. We didn't know what we were going to do next. And at that point, we decided we're going to have to start building something. And we looked around, and this concept of MOOCs had been out there, but nobody had built a platform that would allow a student to come in and allow us to measure the pedagogy of what it was they were doing, so that we could now begin to collect the data. And what we found was that if we gave students about 6 minutes of content and then had them do an assessment or interactive activity, allow them to have a transcription for the course so that they could click on a button that would take them right back in the lecture to the video of that they would have a very engaging, active learning experience. And lo and behold, 7,000 people out of 160,000 passed this course. Now, you would say, that's not that big a number. But this is a really, really hard MIT course. And Anant would have had to teach 40 years, 2 semesters, in order to graduate that many students. So professors got very turned on by this idea that they could share this knowledge. Well, edX was born at that point. Harvard and MIT each put in $30 million. And we decided that we would invite the top 100 worldwide universities to join us. We've accepted about 40 so far. We'll probably cap it at 50. And they are using the edX platform to provide 3 solutions. The first is access to the world's best education to students anywhere that want them at any age group for free. The second is, how can we best implement technology in residential campus settings in order to improve learner outcomes? And I'll tell you some stories about that as we go through the morning. And the third one is a longitudinal study on how do online learners learn. Because all of you have or know children that are entering college right now, and their brains have been rewired by us. Since they were in first grade, they've had handheld devices. So we have a whole new group of students that learn a little bit of a different way. So if you had fallen asleep in a classroom 400 years ago and you woke up today, you would feel very comfortable with the surroundings you were in, because not much has changed in education. Our thought is, there's no reason for you to think of education as something that needs to necessarily take 4 years. Maybe you need to take a year of your foundational courses while you're in high school as MOOCs and get credit for them when you go to college. Maybe college is 2 years with a 3rd year of service. There's lots of things that are possible, and what employers want is to see that they are getting value for the type of education their employees have had, so that they can be worth the money that will help them pay off the loans that they currently take. And we're upside down in that equation right now. So don't be surprised in the future if you see a matrix of courses that are requested by certain employers that they would like you to get from any university, and you collect the certificates, credentials, and badges. They can be from MOOCs, they can be from college courses, and then you come apply to us because we know that you have the skills that we want, and we're willing to pay you the base level salary that you need. That's the world that we're kind of moving to. And then finally, if I could take 30 seconds more. In order to make sure that anybody could do this, and not just edX, we decided to make the software open source, which means that anybody in the world that wants to take the platform that edX built, is not restrained by their income or their ability to afford that for a population. They can take it and have it for free. They stand it up, they use the pedagogy, they build the courses, they become part of the global federation and community of edX users. And right now, today, Saudi Arabia has adopted it, Jordan has adopted it, China has adopted it, Japan has adopted it, France has adopted it. India and Israel will announce in a couple of weeks that they've adopted it. They're using this platform to educate this vast population of people that wouldn't have had access to education in a way that is very cost efficient for them to reach millions of people at one time. So that's basically what the edX introductory story is. Yes.
Excellent. And actually, just off of that, I'm going to switch up my questions slightly. Off of that, I wanted to get a sense, and Barry will just sort of move right down the table from you toward me. Is technology, and so not edX specifically, but is technology on our campuses, are you seeing that as a collaborative opportunity to enhance the experience on your campus, or is this a competitor that that is going to be a threat of sorts to colleges? I mean, all of a sudden, our four-year traditional college degree got reduced down to maybe 2 years, according to Lee. How are you embracing technology at Worcester State? And if each of you could think of that response.
Thank you, Rich, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. It's a pleasure not to be talking about student parking. So I'm very happy to be here and talking about anything other than student parking. In terms of your question about technology, Rich, it's something that I think all three of us from the university side of things can state is that technology infusion on our campuses has been significant for the last decade or more. Smart classrooms have been put in place at Worcester State about a decade ago. The campus was Wi-Fi'd probably 7 years ago, where you can now sit outside, outside, and connect to the internet. Faculty now, we have at Worcester State online courses ranging in just below about 700 that are offered. And we serve, just to give some perspective on the Worcester State student population right now, we are serving predominantly a Central Mass population. About 85% of our students come from Central Mass, and about 96% of them are in state. So we have a draw solely from within the Commonwealth, but our students are still craving that technology, as are our faculty. So we have certainly developed these online courses. We've also developed hybrid courses, which are taught using both the online methodology as well as the in-person methodology, which I think is, for now, is very attractive to the student learner. And one of the things that we are trying to be sensitive to is that while the MOOCs and extra technology is wonderful in terms of the delivery of courses, we want to be sensitive to how the learners are receiving that information, that they're getting at the right level. So we continue to try to embrace the technology as much as possible. The two examples of the online and the blended courses are certainly just two that we have. There are several of those others that are taking place regularly.
Great, thank you. Robert, who's benefiting most from this? The sort of current traditional students, or are you seeing a growth in adult learners who are seeing an opportunity to reconnect with higher education through some of this online technology?
I think both groups benefit from this ultimately. At Becker, we have online courses, we have an online degree. We also have blended courses, just as Barry stated as well. Probably the biggest benefactor of this will be individuals who are the non-traditional students, the adult students, who want to go back to school. They don't have a whole lot of time. This eliminates the necessity for them to go on to physically come to campus to go to class. The other side of this coin is that technology is a tool. And so when we look at online degrees and we look at the technology, may it be a flipped classroom, a hybrid a course, or a fully online degree, the technology is a tool, and what we have to make sure of is that students are realizing the outcomes that are necessary so that real learning is taking place. Now, for traditional age students, I think we also have to be careful because when they're going through college, we're not just trying to develop them academically. There's a social, psychological, emotional, ethical, and moral development that takes place that I think the 4-year degree process helps the students to step through. So I'm all for the technology as long as we can blend in that natural development of the young adult moving through that transitionary stage of life between the ages of 17 and 22.
Great, thank you. David, Clark's a research university. Are there new challenges or imperatives for a research university to be adopting technology faster or differently than what we've talked about so far?
Well, we were in many ways consciously a late adopter of technology in this area. And I think that in all of your organizations and businesses, you need to make a decision about whether you're going to be one of the first organizations really to be testing out new applications of technology. And we made the decision actually that for us, we wanted to see some of these technological platforms mature a little bit before we figured out exactly how we were going to use them in this regard. So we actually don't participate heavily yet in MOOCs or online technology or anything else. I want to piggyback, if I can, upon something Robert said, because I think he nailed the point. I think when we look back upon this period, 20 years from now, we're going to see that in some ways there have been 3 transformational changes underway. One of them is technology. A second is the financial model for colleges. But the third, and I think the most important that we will reflect on 20 years from now, is the way in which education has become far more centered upon educational outcomes. I mean, what our students learn, what our students do and can do, and the capabilities that they demonstrate, ultimately is going to emerge as the driver of the success of our colleges and universities and of our regional economies. As Robert said, the technology piece of this will be a means to an end of that end. And my bet is, in the end, it's that focus on outcomes that we're going to be talking about 25 years from now.
Great. Well, I'm going to keep you on the mic for a second there, though. Liberal arts right now is sort of under fire in any number of quarters. And the liberal arts education, some might say is a luxury of a bygone era. You're a very strong proponent of the liberal arts education and its value to the individual, but that value to the individual as it pertains to society in general and to business and industry. Can you talk a little about, and is it a contradiction to be trying to talk about the return on investment of an education in a liberal arts environment?
So let's be clear about what we're talking about when we're talking about liberal arts. Let me distinguish 3 things. First of all, classic liberal arts colleges. So here in Worcester, that will be something like Holy Cross or Assumption College. Across the country, it's Hampshire or Skidmore or Bates. There are about 200 to 300 liberal arts colleges in this country. So not very many. That's the first version. The second version is colleges and universities that principally award degrees in the arts and sciences. So Clark would fall into this category. Most of the degrees we award are things like history, math, physics, political science. They are, if you like, classic arts and sciences degrees. If you look at the total number of degrees awarded in the United States every year, just 3% of those degrees are classic liberal arts degrees. So we have to think very much about what we're talking about here. The third version of liberal education is a commitment to liberal education that exists in almost every higher education institution in this country. And that's a belief that whatever career field you go into, whether you're going in a path of becoming active in the medical field or in criminal justice, whatever it might be, you as a young person or as an emerging adult or as an adult learner benefit from a commitment to critical thinking, good communication skills, the ability to solve problems, rigor of analysis on an issue of one form or another. And ultimately, when Rich says, I'm a passionate supporter of liberal education, that's what I'm a passionate supporter of. It's a belief that this country, our community, is best served actually when all of our students have an education that enables them to think effectively, to communicate well, to solve problems in one form or another. You know, when I became president, I did the tour and I interviewed a lot of heads of hospitals and heads of law firms and businesses, non-profit organizations, and I'd ask them the question, what do you look for in college students that you hire? And how do you hire in that regard? And almost without exception, major employers will continue to say that the capabilities we're looking for in our hires, and this is across every sector of the economy, is the ability to think. The values are very important to employers. What Robert was hinting at when he was saying, you know, the development of the whole person is very important. So good judgment, the ability when you're really tested in an organization, not to do the easy thing, but to do the hard thing that represents the value of your organization. The ability to communicate effectively. That's what employers will tell us remains crucial in the employees they hire. Now, in addition, they want employees to have field-specific skills in this regard. But I don't think liberal education is going away. I do think liberal education needs to move forward and needs to be enhanced, but I'll save those comments for a little later.
Great, thanks. Barry, I've got to get right back to you, Robert, but Barry, you mentioned the target student population for you at Worcester State, and we had flashed a graph that shows a decline in traditional age students in Massachusetts. We didn't break it out by regions of the state, but in terms of being able to recruit a homegrown talent pool, is that something that at a public university you have to be concerned about, or do you feel that the sort of the price differentiation that you have with independent colleges sort of provides a buffer to demographic declines?
The price point, Rich, really does provide a good buffer. I mean, you know, for a commuting student to attend Worcester State right now, it is under $9,000 a year. If you want to live on campus, it's an additional $10,000 for room and board. So that price point makes us a very attractive option here in Central Massachusetts, and that's the same price point or very similar price point that you're going to see at all the public institutions around the Commonwealth. The reality, though, is that price point only helps so much because, as I mentioned earlier, with the, as you cited, the decline of student-age freshman 18-year-olds in the Northeast, and it actually extends below New England, but certainly the perspective of losing 9%, and that's what Massachusetts is scheduled to lose, And when you're the president of an institution that historically has recruited 80 to 85% of its students from Central Massachusetts, that tells me that I have a lot of work to do, not only in terms of recruiting students outside of region, but outside the state and even internationally. And that's something that we've been talking about quite a bit. We did add this September some new residential housing capacity to try to attract students and certainly make sure that they had some beds here on campus. Again, historically, Worcester State, for those of you who know, for 130 of 140 years of the institution's history, was really a commuter institution. Really was founded as a commuter school. We've only added our housing component over the last decade to 15 years or so in a meaningful way. So the new bed capacity allows us to recruit outside of region, but that's also where technology, I think, comes in and plays a key role for us moving forward, because even the bed capacity will only allow us to do so much. So that's where online learning and other forms of expanded course offerings will allow us to go into other parts of Massachusetts, other parts of New England in a way that we couldn't afford to do otherwise.
And do you think that is going to be with more undergraduates or more graduate education?
Well, as Robert said, the realities that I think many of us are facing is the changing demographic of students coming to higher education. And one of the biggest changes for us at Worcester State has been the increased number of transfer students, predominantly coming from Quinn Sigma Community College, also in the Mount, and that raises our student age of our student population, but it also brings a professional student to our campus, meaning they are usually holding down a job or running a family or household on the side of going to school part-time. That means we have to be more nimble in terms of how we get our courses delivered to those students, and that creates a different type of atmosphere than we've had. We certainly still want to attract that 18-year-old to come have that full residential experience, because it is about both the education that goes on in the classroom and that co-curricular opportunity as well to enrich the entire student. But we are recognizing more and more the reality of the adult learner.
Great. Robert, you've also are facing some of the same demographic challenges that Barry spoke of and that we showed, but you don't have that benefit on the necessarily on the price of college, cost of college side, but you've still have been presiding over a college that's been going through a renaissance of sorts over the last 5 years. That is quite impressive. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little about how you come into a tough environment and turn a college around as you're turning around Becker.
I think for me, fundamentally, the two words I would use would be value proposition. Identifying a clear value proposition so that students can realize a real return on their investment. We took a look at what our niche was in the marketplace. We found the tallest building and the biggest drum, and we beat it as loud as we possibly could. And we've had 5 consecutive years of enrollment growth, averaging about 6% a year. We've increased our student profile. Our SAT scores have gone up more than 125 points over the last 4 or 5 years. Our acceptance rate has dropped from 88% to 62%. We now enroll more students from California than we do from New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine combined. So we looked at our video game design program, which is one of our signature programs, and that program has had phenomenal growth. Becker College has become known as a thought leader in that space. We're the #1 producer of vet techs in all of New England and number 15th in the country. We have a wonderful animal science program. Our nursing program is ranked as the top program among undergraduate private colleges in the Commonwealth in terms of passage of the NCLEX exam, 100%. So if any of you get sick, and I don't want you to get sick, but if you do, the first thing you ask the nurse is, did they graduate from Becker? But my point is that we identified our niche programs, and we built our brand around that. And we have a 99% job placement rate. That is, 99% of our students get jobs or move on towards advanced study. That's the value proposition. So for us, it's all about making sure that we have a good product and that our students are ready. David talked about the liberal education. We very much believe in that. Even though most of our degree programs are designed for our students to get jobs, we steep them in the tradition of liberal education. We have 5 core classes that all students will have to start taking starting next fall as part of our general curriculum, general core education, which will teach them the skill of empathy, social and emotional intelligence, divergent thinking, and entrepreneurial outlook. An entrepreneurial outlook is not about teaching them to become entrepreneurs, but helping them to understand how they add value. Liberal education is important because we're educating a generation of young people who will have over 15 jobs by the age of 40. According to Forbes magazine, millennials stay on the job on an average of 2.2 years. When I graduated from college in 1982, if I changed jobs every 2.2 years, my father and everybody else would have looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" So the point is that it's a value proposition, making sure you have a strong niche. And the reason that we've gone to places like California, Texas, and Florida, and other places to diversify our geographic diversity is simply because of the demographics.
Great. Lee, we've talked about edX and online learning in the context of how it may interact with colleges and universities. Are you doing anything where you're interacting directly with businesses as well?
So there were a lot of interesting, I think, comments made up here about that. And yes, to a degree, there are probably 700 edX installations that businesses are using to take the technology and educate employees internally because it's faster, cheaper, better, quicker, data-driven, et cetera. And we welcome them to go do that. But frankly, we don't really care. That's not our mission. Our mission, and I certainly want everybody to understand, we were created by universities and are formed today by over 40 partner universities, plus organizations like the Smithsonian and IMF and others that are aligned with us about creating courses for free that they can make available to everyone everywhere. The fact that that the university exists and delivers a great experience for people from 18 to 22, some of whom can afford it and some of whom not, is not something that's going to go away. It's one of the most cherished institutions that we've got. The issue is everybody else. Okay? And so this is a problem that we're trying to address. And let me give you a couple of examples because I think that these stories are interesting. The fellow that invented Square, the little white thing you put on top of your cell phone and swipe so you're now a business with a credit card, started a company called Launch Code. And he's from St. Louis. Now he flies around in a jet and has houses everywhere. But he's from St. Louis. And he went there and he said, I'm going to look at what course do I think someone could take that would indicate to me they had a proclivity to be a successful programmer? Because programming is where the jobs are. I'm going to look for someone that'd be a coder. He decided that the edX course from Harvard called CS50, which gets about 260,000 people every time we run it, running through this. And by the way, edX has, I looked at the state numbers here, and this is why this is so fascinating. edX has, in 2 years, 4 million registered users taking 6 million course instances. So we have some mega data to work with. And this has just kind of come up out of the ground. This guy runs this course, puts a sign and puts something up on Craigslist. 200 people show up at the library. They're truck drivers. They're moms that want to go back into the workforce. They were former teachers. They come from every walk of life. And he escorts them through this course and mentors them. And the idea is that if you pass the course, he's going to get you an internship at one of the St. Louis companies that he's affiliated with for 6 months. And if you do well, and they'll partner you up with a coder in those businesses. If you do well, they'll give you a full-time job. Not a job where you come out and get $18,000 a year, a job where you come out and get $100,000 a year. This is life-changing. 100% of the people that he selected and coached through the course passed the course. 95% of them got the internships. 90% of them got offered full-time jobs. Out of that 90%, they were rated among their companies as the best new employee hires that that company had. So we did a second test. We took the resumes from those people and we went to the HR departments of those companies. We said, here you go. Would you give this person an interview for this level job? 100% declined. No way. So we are so off balance in terms of the education we can provide and how we hire that this access to education becomes critically important if we're going to actually see the kinds of improvements and pickups that we need in order to have a robust economy. And it's not just here, it's everywhere in the world. So my last point, only because I didn't get asked any questions for like 2 cycles, is in India right now, that was the second largest population of people taking courses on X. 75% are not in the US. In India right now, an Indian employee at a high-tech company, because we get these stories come back to us all the time, is taking an MIT course for free on edX and walking into the boss's office with his certificate of completion and getting a $25 a month raise, which is incredibly life-changing in India. And it doesn't happen for everybody at every place, but it's happening a lot. And it doesn't matter that I also have these courses from Berkeley or from Rice or from other places. The MIT name just rocks them, and the courses are very hard. So when employees start to find that access to education that will improve their competency also has an effect in life, we're converting them back into lifelong learners for good reason, and they're using this to improve their overall outcomes and dispositions. So companies want to adopt that too and do it internally. It's fascinating, interesting to see, and there's a lot of stories. But for this topic, I think we probably focus on public education, right?
Terrific, thank you. David, one of the other things that I think is, we're sort of celebrating the anniversary of the Worcester Business Journal and the role of both, last month the healthcare community in the life of Worcester. The three of you as presidents of institutions here play a huge role in the life and really identity of Worcester in many ways. Can you talk a little about how you interact as a civic business leader in addition to being sort of college president? I know they're not mutually exclusive roles, but sometimes folks don't think of you as a business leader.
Well, that begins, I think, and this is not just true of higher education institutions, it's true of our hospitals and other organizations across this city. We very directly made the decision at Clark 30 years ago when Dick Traynor was president that Clark University was not going to flourish unless the neighborhood and the community and the city that we were a part of flourished as well. The concept that we adopted was the concept of being an anchor institution. But we also adopted the concept of doing this in partnership. So whenever we talk about any role that we play in the city or in our neighborhood, the first word out of our mouths is always partnership. We literally have a University Park partnership, which is our neighborhood partnership with our neighbors and CDC and the churches and things like that. There's a board that manages that partnership. Clark has 1 seat, Jack Foley, 1 seat on that partnership of a board of about 10. And that's a very conscious decision on our part that we have to recognize that we have to do things that benefit not just Clark University, but the whole city as well. I'm incredibly proud to work in Worcester and to work in the higher education community here, because I think almost unmatched across this country, and everyone in this room should know this, almost unmatched across this country. You have a set of public and private higher education institutions here that have committed themselves to the success of this city and our community in this regard, truly in a way that is almost unmatched across this country in this regard. This takes an incredible amount of hard work on our part, but we find that it is intensely rewarding and supports our mission in this regard. I'd say, Rich, though, in addition to that this is a precious resource that we have to steward, this relationship of higher education to our community here. There's a lot of good work going on to ensure, for example, that our graduates from our institutions can stay in this community, can stay in Massachusetts, and add another round of fuel to our economic engine. The Chamber of Commerce has really taken the lead on that under Tim Murray, and I applaud that. So we try, I think the word I would use to describe how we do business in the city is we try and be a partner in that
Great.
regard.
Thank you. Robert, can you give a few sort of specific ways in which Becker and its students and faculty and community engage with the broader Worcester community?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, our students, they do lots of community service hours throughout the community in terms of community service projects, trying to give back to the community. I have a fundamental belief that if you're an educated person on a planet that has over 7 billion people, then you are privileged. So my story to our students is that to whom much is given, much is required. So you have to give back to the community, which means you must become intricately involved in the community. Elm Park School would be an example where our students go up and work with the students up there on a regular basis to help them and to assist them. May it be tutoring, may it be coaching, may it be just working with them to serve as a positive role model. I ask that our faculty and staff become engaged in the community just in terms of community service and working with nonprofits and giving back. Myself, I'm actively engaged within a number of organizations for that sole purpose. I think in order to have a strong college or university within any city, that institution must become part of the community. And you can't do that by being introspective, if you will, only looking at yourself. You have to figure out how you can give back and make a difference in the community. And I think to the extent that we as institutions of higher learning continue to have a great deal of gratitude to the community to which we serve, it becomes a two-way street, and the community gives back to us, we give back to the community, and it creates a win-win scenario. I agree with David. I don't think you can find any place else in the country where you have a city just under 200,000 with just under 200,000 people with this many colleges and universities that have this much diversity among the institutions and for the most part are not in direct competition. So therefore we can really become an economic driver for the local community here.
Great. Barry, can you comment on that as well?
Sure. There we go. Yeah, absolutely, Rich. A couple examples are one on a kind of a preservation point of view. The university consciously made a decision about 6 years ago to save a failing nonprofit organization, the Worcester Center for the Crafts, and engaged not only because they wanted to preserve this institution here in Worcester, but also because the university saw an opportunity to advance our visual and performing arts program. So now we offer classes in visual and performing arts at the Craft Center, but we've also continued to maintain the Craft Center's 501c3. They have the distinction of the second oldest continuously running Craft Center in the nation. And this was very important not only for the university, but for the community to have this preserved and move forward. And we all have examples, each of the schools in Worcester has examples of these types of preservation activities. On the programmatic side, one example that stands out among all of our opportunities, and we regularly provide over 140,000 hours of service to the community by Worcester State students, but the one that stands out is our Latino Education Institute, founded about a dozen years ago, really done, though, in a collaborative way with members of the community, getting together with the higher ed community, specifically Worcester State, to look at an issue that the city was facing with regards to the Latino student achievement gap issues. So we have set up a program on our campus. It's been housed, funded through the university's funding, through grant funding, and has a wonderful track record now of working with elementary, middle, and high school students in the city of Worcester, using Worcester State students, using faculty from the Worcester Public Schools to help make these Latino students, and they're predominantly Latino, but not exclusively, college ready. Their graduation rate or acceptance into college is over 90%, and their graduation rate from college is outstanding. And this is an example of a real collaborative effort that was done grassroots, where the city and the university saw a problem and worked to try to solve that problem. We are now at a point where we're looking to expand the LEI services, not only here in Worcester, but even across the state. And it was really founded as a great example of what I think all of us here on the panel and all of us here in the audience really enjoy about living in Worcester, which is that collaborative spirit between the higher ed community and the city of Worcester.
Great, thank you. A few years ago, AICM has an annual dinner every year, and I think our third dinner, we honored the colleges of the Worcester Consortium, as it was called at the time, and wanted to sort of focus on the economic of the colleges and universities as economic engines here in Worcester. We wanted to try to find some stories, and we're hoping that there were some stories that would support that. And we did about a 4 or 5 minute video on it. We had more material to work with than I think exists practically in any city in the state. Although I actually think that the doesn't take a lot to start digging to find all these examples of partnerships. At the time, I think the colleges were coming together to help in the restoration of the Hanover Theater. When you were talking about the Crafts Center, I thought that was another arts endeavor that really was impressive. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask everyone a very quick final question. Where part of the subject matter was Worcester 2025. Lee, right now, would you happen to know what your top major or what your top class? You don't have majors as such. What's the top class that people enroll in, and what do you think that's going to be in 10 years? And I'd ask the other presidents to give us a sense of where curriculum is driving your institutions.
Well, this week, it's the science of happiness at Berkeley. It's very interesting. 2 weeks ago, it was Linux system administrator. So really depends on the weather, I think. But interestingly, though, we're partnered up with the governor from Tennessee who started a program called 55 by 25. And by the year 2025, they want 55% of their citizens to have a post-high school credential, certificate, or degree. And they're using the edX system to go deliver that. And you can take any course that you want for free. The community colleges and the state university system are working to put those courses together. They've done a fantastic study that maps the skills that you would need in the area code where you are to the curriculum that you would get, so that you didn't have to go across the state if you were going to take a course on welding because car building was on the other side of the state. So I think that what we'll see over the next bunches of years is that the schools and universities will start to develop courses that are available for those that are post-college grade that they can use in order to get certificates and degrees in order to promote their own well-being both in the community and for their own families.
Great. Thank you. Barry, before you answer that, I just want to put the audience on notice. You've got a homework assignment over the next minute or so, is to also think of questions for our panelists as we're about to go into a Q&A session.
We would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that in 2000 we built the Ghosh Science Center under the leadership then of President Kalian Ghosh, and it has been an example of build it and they will come. And since that point in time, our science programs have really taken off. And they are in the traditional sciences. We've also seen expansion in our OT, our speech, and our nursing programs, which I think we will continue to see moving forward for the next decade or so. There's also programs, though, in green chemistry that have been developed where the enrollment has gone from about 5 students to about 25 students over the last decade. And we have just started a program in big data, looking at cloud computing, and that is also starting to see some big dividends. I would like to just piggyback on something Lee said, though. I think one of the alternative types of program delivery that we're going to be looking at seriously currently now and for the next decade is certificate offerings. Where again, the working professional or business corporation doesn't need their employees to get a full bachelor's degree, but may need a cohort of courses that are specifically aimed at what skill deficiencies there are, and we are developing those certificate programs to kind of be more nimble in terms of what we can offer the community moving forward.
Great, thank you. Barbara, what's hot now? What do you expect to be hot in 10 years?
I think one of the areas that will really be hot in 10 years, we actually just started a degree program in this area, is the area of data science, big data. I think data and information is going to become a way of life. It's going to become, from what I understand, by the year 2020, something like a $17 trillion industry worldwide. And I think to the extent that students coming out of college will be able to manage data, make useful knowledge from it, and respond to the marketplace accordingly, which will help them to make good decisions, will be very, very important. I think all students coming out of college today need to have some form of computer programming just as a basic skill set in this day and age. And also at Becker, just like Barry just mentioned, we do have an adult division that focuses on certificates. So I think this whole idea of the stackable degree, where you start with a certificate, maybe move to an associate's, and then ultimately to a 4-year degree and ultimately a graduate degree will be important. And then I think the last thing is competency-based education. And I think that you'll see more colleges looking at, speaking to David's earlier point, outcomes. And I think that's what the competency-based degree will force us to look at.
Right. David?
I think our focus in the next 10 years or so is likely to be on, I guess, what I would call the grand challenges facing our community and our country. So we are, Clark has done a tremendous amount of work, for example, over the last 15 years in K through 12 education. We're becoming very interested in what we can offer in the area of health, for example. What can we do with our partners in the city and in this Commonwealth really to rise the level of public health and health prevention, whether that's around issues of childhood asthma or healthy eating or issues of obesity and things like that. We're very focused on those. And the other is that I think that we will find ourselves in the middle of the work that all of our community will be on around questions of climate change. Do you think issues of energy systems and of resilience of communities to the kinds of dramatic changes that are already baked into our future here over the next 50 years are going to be something that we're going to be very focused on.
Great. And looking out 10 years, the Association of American Colleges and Universities did a study recently that said 7 of the 10 most in-demand jobs today did not exist 10 years ago. So it's a very challenging and fast-moving world that our institutions are dealing with, trying to predict what will, in fact, be out there and then what will folks need to know. I'd ask you all first to offer a round of applause to our panelists. And then I need a first brave soul that will offer. Oh, we don't need a lot of brave souls right there. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Tom Doobie from.
Yep.
from Greenleaf Construction. Excuse me. I was just wondering, as David, as you talked about outcomes, I think that makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you. Even though the numbers show that the net cost is down, it really does seem pretty hard to believe. It's just not what you're hearing, and I'm not sure why that is, but it is more painful, I guess, for people who have graduated from college and are doing well, and then they get burdened with that cost, I guess, as there probably is less financial aid for them. What I really want to know about your thoughts are, do you think that as you get to outcomes, like a gap year, like I was the former board of directors president of Dyname, and I know its involvement with Clark. Do you think that a gap year might become more popular, where people would focus on what they might want to do in the future, pick a few things, do some internships, and then their curriculum that they take at college will be a little more focused? I just would like to know your thoughts about that.
So the short answer is yes. I think we're already, where I come from in the UK, gap years between high school and college are, a quite regular pattern of occurrence. I think it actually connects to some of our earlier comments here. It's not just the gap year, it's this whole notion that the traditional classroom-based experience is probably going to shrink a little bit as the most important part of the paradigm of education. It's not going to go away, particularly at traditional college-age populations like Clark serves. But I think we're going to see in a whole variety of different modalities a much more stronger emphasis upon learning that takes place outside of the classroom, whether that be in a gap year before students come to a college, whether it be the notion of perhaps spending a year as part of your degree off-site, seconded to a business or an organization, or whether it be new forms of study abroad, internships, research assistantships, civic engagement. I think the positive shift we're going to see is a much more broader concept of the places where educational learning can take place and should take place. And I think that's a great thing.
Okay. Do you want, right back there, and then you. Oh, okay.
Hi, Jeff Gutzfeld from Strategic Building Solutions. This is an interesting panel to have brick and mortar schools on the same panel with an online learner. And this kind of plays, a question I have is kind of based on what David said about values and being able to prove value upon graduations, also tied with Lee and the online learning. A lot of what you were talking about has to do with continuing education, lifelong learning, which isn't necessarily in conflict with the undergraduate degree that's being offered by the University of Phoenix or the Southern New Hampshire University. But my question kind of comes to you, to the universities themselves, and to any research that you may have collected or are compiling to see. As an employer, and when it comes time for me to hire staff onto my company, what's the difference you're seeing from an online degree versus a four-year college brick and mortar degree? I know there's a lot of talk out there about the value of the education. When I'm making a decision about hiring somebody, there hasn't been a lot of data shown to us yet of the benefits of having an online degree. Can you talk a little bit about the difference from an employee perspective of hiring people, that shift between an online learning versus the brick and mortar?
Well, first, edX doesn't offer degrees. So we provide access to education and you can get a certificate. So I understand your question, but I need to parse it out that way. That's not what we do. The SNHUs, the laureates, the Kaplans, et cetera, that are creating online degrees now, I think are offering a type of education. You as employers would have to assess that. I can tell you that we're bigger, because we're also focused on residential learning, we're bigger advocates of taking a MOOC and deploying it in a residential setting, and I think that you come out with an incredible graduate and employee when you do that. To give you an example, at MIT, they have something called the first-year flag. So after 5 weeks, if you're not doing good and they think that you don't belong at MIT, they send you a letter. essentially says, snap out of it and stop drinking beer and get to class. Over the last 2 years, 85% of the freshmen are now taking their courses as MOOCs, where they take the lecture outside of class, they come to class to learn how to apply the knowledge with the professor, which is kind of a different role for professors that just lectured before. Mm-hmm. And freshman flags this year were down to not 30% of the class, 2 flags. So when students are allowed to be part of this active learning experience and the professors get a chance to work with them on their questions and answers, we're turning out much stronger students, I think, than if they had just attended a lecture or if they had just gone to online. So I'd say look for those qualifications.
Okay. How about just right in front? I'll get, so then you, then Jerry. Thank you.
Hi, Ann DeBiasio from Eastern Insurance Group. My question, Lee, is that your courses are offered worldwide. What percentage do you find people participating, from the U.S.?
25% are from the U.S. right now, and their numbers are doubling every year. So we're at 4 million this year. We'll be at 8 million by the end of the year of registered users, and each one takes about 1.5 to 2 courses.
Great. Right here.
Hi, David Jordan from Seven Hills Foundation. I'm interested in the global connection to higher education, in the role or responsibilities of global citizenship. How, given the interconnectedness of the globe, Ebola is a good example of how what happens in Africa or in Southeast Asia has a ripple effect that directly affects us, not only here in the US, but certainly here in Worcester. So what is the role or the emergent role of higher education in looking beyond just Worcester or just Massachusetts or just the United States? Where do you want to take higher education and affect social good, social change, economic development that affects us in different parts of the world? And do we have such a role?
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely believe we do have a role in terms of global education and making sure that our students understand that you're not just here in Worcester or Massachusetts or the good old US of A, that they are truly global citizens. Fundamentally, I believe that if we don't expose our students to the possibilities of what they can do across the planet, how they can make a difference, and how they fit into a global society, I really do believe we're essentially doing educational malpractice, if you will, by not giving them that level of exposure. Because even though we have a video game design program and we run this summer institute, and we had students from about 22 students from about 11 different colleges, and working on video games. And at 2/3 of the way through the program, I walked over and I asked the students, so what are you getting from this? And they gave me a wide range of answers. And one of them said, communication. I said, well, tell me about that. He said, it never occurred to me that even though I'm working on a team right here to put together a video game, that part of my team may be in Australia, India, Germany, and Africa. So therefore, I have to understand how to communicate and work with people, not just from all walks of life, but from every corner of the planet. And that's the world that our students have grown up in, and we have a social responsibility to ensure that they are exposed to the whole idea of globalization and what it means to be a global citizen. And you don't necessarily have to travel across the globe, especially being right here in Central Massachusetts. We can expose our students to just about any culture on the planet by driving 30, 45 miles in any direction. We can find that culture somewhere here in the area.
I'd like to add on to Robert's comment. First, if you take an edX course, I hope everybody does, just for fun, nothing else. A key part of that is the discussion forums in the Google Hangouts. and there's students from all over the world that are working together. It's hard for us as course instructors and professors to look at those courses and imagine these students fighting sometime in the future when they're building these bonds, discussing chemistry and physics and game design. It's amazing. The other part of the edX business, and this I think should help you feel better about where education is going. Part of the edX practice is to license our courses from our universities to other countries who are translating them and providing them to their students. Russia is going to announce that 13 of their universities are going to be licensing edX courses, in the very near future. And the reason that they want to do that is to dispel some of the rumors about the West that they get from a very slanted media picture within their own country. By taking these courses and bringing those students in alignment with students everywhere, they will create real progress. Because a strong U.S. and a crummy everywhere else is a bad situation for learners in education.
Right. And the one thing I would add is, we have seen an explosion in Massachusetts in the number of international students coming here to study, that there is a recognition or appreciation for the four-year residential experience around the world, and that Massachusetts definitely has an education destination reputation. And so some of that global awareness takes place in the cafeteria at Worcester State, at Becker, at Clark, with those students and students from here or other states, interacting. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, the direct flights from South America through Copa Airlines serves all of South America through Panama City to Boston, direct flight from Panama City to Boston. President of Copa Airlines is a graduate of Holy Cross. And he wanted, and I think one of his son or daughters is going to another college here in Massachusetts. And I think that there was an appreciation that this is, a rich market to be able to essentially export the fine education available here to the rest of the world, and that's a little bit of their business model. Jerry D'Amico.
Superb program, excellent. Well done.
Katie, we've got a mic. I'm giving a former politician a mic is
that's a dangerous thing, by the way.
Scary thought, but
I'm still excited about last night in some ways. Question. A lot has been talked about the economy, globalization, technology, great change. Some discussion about the secondary schools of this city and other urban centers. Grades 11 and 12. What kind of relationships dealing with human capital and content can be developed? We've talked about a program right from high school to the first year. But for the product of our secondary schools in this city, and maybe beyond, there's a great challenge. And I think there's a role for higher ed in that challenge, to restructure the secondary experience, grades 12 certainly, grades 11 possibly, with greater collaboration, greater programs, greater involvement with the public schools and the pedagogy of higher education. I think that's the question.
Great. Any takers on that?
Well, I think my answer, Jerry, would be that there's been a very powerful collaboration between higher ed and the K through 12 system in this city for a long time now, and we're seeing the fruits of some of that in this regard. Certainly here at Clark, our work at University Park Campus School and at Claremont Academy and middle schools and elementary schools across the city, I think is really making a difference in this regard. We fundamentally believe, let me just put this out here, that you can't have a great city without a great urban public education system. And all of us, not just higher ed, but the business community, the healthcare community, the construction community, the insurance community, all of us, everyone in this room has a stake in the caliber of the of urban education and of public education in this city in this regard. And there are just so many different ways in which that collaboration can be beneficial to the schools. Pipeline programs, the various institutes that we're all involved in. So I guess my encouragement would be that all of us here, not just higher ed, but everyone in this city, see themselves as stakeholders in the future of public education here.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, two things. Number one is, I think, to David's point, it is a responsibility of all of us, because there needs to be, I believe, like there was in the 60s and the 70s, a kind of a national call for folks to become teachers. Because what we are finding is that students are not going into education in the numbers that they used to go into. We had Joe Kennedy come and speak on campus a few weeks back, and he quoted that 75% of the students who arrive at Harvard as freshmen want to go into education, but 90% when they graduate go into finance. So we need to deal with that reality as a community, as a society, that we need to create pipelines and encourage students to go into education, and we need to come up with a mechanism that makes it financially viable for them to do that. I mean, we need to kind of break down some of the myths and the barriers about the pay and the compensation that teachers get and the career paths that teaching can lead to. But we need to really kind of get back to celebrating education in a way that we haven't done before. I would also just echo what David said in terms of, we have hosts of programs now and have been working since Governor Patrick put in Secretary of Education, where that reports both K through 12 and higher ed report up to the Secretary in a way that keeps the dialogue open for both sectors, that we make sure that we are in sync. One issue that we've been tackling very recently is reducing the amount of remediation that students are requiring when they come to college, and how do we tackle that at the K through 12 level and not bring students who are maybe ill-prepared to college campuses where they end up failing, incurring debt, stopping out, and really just getting an incomplete experience at a college campus. There are 600,000 people in Massachusetts right now who have some college credit but don't have a degree. One of the things we need to focus on as a higher ed system is getting those people to come back and finish their degrees, because our state needs about 50,000 more degrees achieved by 2025, so that we can basically support the economic viability of our Commonwealth.
I'll give you something really practical about this. edX is about to launch all 37 of the AP courses as free online MOOCs. And the problem that we have with high schools right now is that there's no one available generally in the schools to teach AP courses to students. Now, I went to Clark as a freshman. I came here, so I got a lot of love for Worcester. We're going to create these courses. We've already raised $5 million to do it. They're underway right now. They're from the world's top universities and high school teachers working in conjunction. We're creating courses for teachers on how to teach an AP course or an on-ramp course using MOOCs and technology in their classrooms. I will commit to you that I will come and partner with any of these institutions on stage here that would like to hold some type of seminar or series for teachers from Worcester that would like to understand how they could access those AP materials and teach them in the classroom with the support and mentorship of these institutions, and would be glad to do it, because Worcester is a hometown team for us. Right? So I think we should try to think of things that we can do that are practical and real, and now this is something that you'd be able to take advantage of, because we've already paid for it. So we're going to deliver it anyways. But it would be great to have everybody be able to take advantage of that. And the average school, high school, a good high school, has 4 of the 37 AP courses. 4. So they don't even have anybody to teach them. Now any student will be able to take them and get them. And the more we can do for teachers, the better off the institutions will be here locally.
Any takers there?
It's a easy.
We'll work on the date afterwards. Sure, I'll defer to you, Peter. We have 2 more questions that I saw behind you. Actually, the gentleman over on that table there had his hand up, I think, first, and then we'll get you, and then perfectly close out with Peter, if we could.
Thank you. Great event, Dave Roth, small business owner, nonprofit leader, as well as very proud alum and parent of Clarkies. My question kind of is going back in the circle of Worcester 2025. And I come at that from the angle of loving Worcester, mom's family from Worcester, kids and mom and I went to school in Worcester and spent a lot of time here, live in Fitchburg. Mentor teens, both local teens, my own, and exchange students from China that we host, from well-to-do families looking for good colleges. My question is, what can Worcester, whether it's the city, the Chamber of Commerce, we're lucky to have Tim here, HECMA, the new organization, et cetera, do to spread the word about the benefits of Worcester as a college town? Being only 20 minutes north of here, all right, 20 miles, depending on traffic, from here, having kids at St. Bernard's High School and Fitchburg High and Leominster and so on, the number of people in that school who have no idea of what a college town Worcester is a sin. They're the locals that we're not reaching. And I don't know if it's the city, Destination Worcester, the city itself, HECMA, Chamber. What can we do or urge the other institutions of Worcester to do to spread this great message that we're hearing today? Because partnership, I always thought, was win-win, which means two-way street. So that's my question, is how can Worcester help itself and help our colleges and universities?
If I could on that one, and then I'll defer to our panelists. A view from Boston, I think Worcester's has a growing reputation as a hot city. And I think that the colleges have a lot to do with it. I think the research that goes on here has a lot to do with it. I think the proximity to Boston has a lot to do with it, and that it is, I think you might be pleasantly surprised that the further, sometimes your reputation increases the further away from home you get. And I think that to some extent that's what's going on here. I think that the excellence of the institutions here, public and private alike, are absolutely putting Worcester on the map. You look at a broader student population outside of Massachusetts, outside of the United States, and that proximity to Boston, Worcester's proximity to Boston, you could almost walk it if you looked at it from Beijing. And so I think that I'll let the local presidents talk about what they're doing in terms of targeting and reminding folks that we've got a gem right underneath us.
Well, I do think there's growing awareness of Worcester, both in the region, but I'm actually going to go back the other way a bit, David. I actually think there's some things we need to do in this city and need to achieve in this city if we're really going to achieve our aspirations for that. So let me just list you my ones. I think this issue of retaining talent in the city is a nut we have to crack, one. Two, I do think the issue of high school education here in particular, we need to be offering the most exceptional K through 12 and higher educational opportunities in the country, and that should really be our aim in this community. Third, I think the issues of transportation in the city, we should take another fresh look at how we can get, and this isn't just for our constituencies, it's for everyone in the city. How can we make it easier to get to all the wonderful resources and organizations and institutions and restaurants and businesses there are across this city? We need to lift our game in transportation. And then lastly, I think we need to lift our game actually in some issues of safety. I think every now and then when you see when you read in the newspapers about some of the gang activities that happen or the shootings that are happening and things like that, you all know the way this works. You can work tremendously to raise the reputation of the city, and it just takes a couple of incidents like that, to really take the air out of the balloon. So I think we are on the rise, but we've also got to invest in the things that will really carry us to the finish line over the next 10 years.
Great. We've got time for one question, and then Peter, if you want to wrap up for us. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I didn't.
My name is Peter Silverman. I'm from Fort Strategic. We're a new consulting firm here in Worcester and looking to grow and help organizations. And I appreciate, Barry, what you said when you first started, that you didn't have to talk about parking. I was a 15-year public school administrator, and I know how some of those issues can get in the way. And I'd like to commend you all on the forward thinking that you have and the actions that you've taken as leading these wonderful educational institutions. Our practice is strategy driven. That's our mission, to help people and organizations develop strategy. And sometimes we ask the tough questions, and I appreciate what you just said, David, in terms of how you'd like to see Worcester grow and what the universities can do. I'd like to ask, what do each of you see as being the biggest couple of challenges that you're facing as you're trying to work towards these ends?
Biggest challenges outside of parking and things that keep me up at night, besides my 16-year-old daughter going to dates and dances. It really, for me, are about retention and recruitment of students. We need to recognize that Worcester State, and have for about a decade now, that we need to tell a better story with getting our students from their first year to their last year and degree completion, and how important that is, not only for Worcester State and its viability, but for the regional economy, so that we don't have this situation, as I mentioned earlier, where you have a number of people, and of that 600,000 that I mentioned in the state who have incomplete degrees, there are 80,000 in Worcester County that have incomplete college degrees, and these are people that we're going to try to focus on. The second piece between retention is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is recruitment for us. And recruitment is tough. It's a tough market. There's a lot of great institutions, and as Rich pointed out at the beginning of the program, in Massachusetts, in New England, we're saturated with wonderful institutions. And so breaking into a new market is very, very difficult for us in a meaningful way. But we're going to do that in creative ways, using technology, using some different methodology in terms of how our programs are structured. But those are the biggest challenges that we have here in Worcester. I think I think I would just say that I ditto to what David had mentioned as some of the things that we're certainly focused on and trying to play our role in solving some of those issues, the safety, the transportation, and alike.
All right, biggest challenge.
I would say the biggest challenge is the widening gap in terms of the haves and the have-nots and the shrinking middle class, because I think that contributes to families' ability to ultimately afford a good college education, may it be at Becker or any of the other institutions.
Right. David?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think access and affordability are kind of almost moral imperatives for us in higher education. We need to figure out a way to make sure that we maintain that. Higher education has been the ladder of opportunity in this country, and it's something that we have to ensure remains for future generations.
Right. And Lee, managing growth, right?
Well, I think these gentlemen are in a better position than I am to offer that, but I usually come back to jobs, 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 right? So come in and start hiring the people that are graduating from these institutions in your local businesses, and then you'll have more of them and louder buzz than I think almost anything else that you can go do.
Great. Thank you. Peter, would you like to? Okay. Well, great. We've got a magic time of trying to get you on your way by 10 o'clock. I think it's 10 o'clock. And thank you so much for your participation, and thank this panel. Thank you. Great.
Thank you so much. Richard, thank you. A terrific job by Rich and the panel. We have a Worcester book, so for those of you with Worcester memories, it'll be a nice piece of nostalgia for those of you who are here, an extra copy for the lobby, as well as our 25th anniversary issue. I'd like to thank David and Bowditch and Dewey for their sponsorship of this event. Thank you so much in your 100 years. And a special thanks to the Beechwood, our host, Curry Printing, Elevation Exhibits, and Revelation Productions. I'm going to hand out the books. We're all set. I noticed early on, I was saying to Barry earlier, we could skip the program because everybody was doing great schmoozing and networking. So a little bit of that right now will set you free, and thank you again.